All right, so we are recording. Hi, Gary.
Hey, how we doing?
We're doing good. How are you doing?
Oh, just fine. Happy to be here.
So, definitely really excited for this chat. The idea for it started when I read a post of yours, and we were just talking before I turned on the camera live. I thought this post was a recent post that he had made, which I found really interesting. On a site E4 for probably a lot of my audience knows what E4 is, but it's uh, a platform basically where a lot of Pokemon collectors talk about various Pokemon topics. And on this, so I read this quote that actually is from 2 years ago, and thought it was recent. But I think it's so interesting that you felt this way back then. And so what I'm going to do is read part of the quote or part of what you wrote for our audience here, and then
Sure.
just kind of have you respond to it, give the audience some of your thoughts on it now, and then we'll kind of go into a dialogue on it and a conversation. All right. So,
Absolutely.
so it starts. So over this last, and this is from 2018. So over
Right.
this last couple years, the hobby has turned into too much of a money game. It's almost as though the dollar has surpassed Pikachu as the Pokemon mascot. To some degree, the dollar has always played a part, maybe somewhere between Abra and Ponyta. In my opinion, that is where it belonged. Nowadays, though, you can hardly get through a thread or article or video without the new mascot raising its ugly head and eating up all that crosses its path. Money is a great thing as far as how it can help the hobby. The danger comes in when it's used to drain the Serenity River. This is happening way too much. So that was 2018 Gary. How is 2020 Gary thinking about 2018 Gary?
Yeah, well, it seems to me like it didn't change anything
Yeah.
because everything that I said seems to be even more dramatic today, than it was back then. Uh, Certainly, it's safe to say everything I said is still at least happening now. As far as getting through anything to do with the hobby, where value and that doesn't come into question. I get messages. I can't 100 messages a day, and almost every single one always has something to do with, well, what do you think this is worth? What do you think the prospects are for the future? What should I pay for this? It's almost like every single one, and it gets trying for me. I mean, I always try to be polite, and I always try to answer in as nice of a way as I can. But it really does get trying because it's hard to get through a message. Just like I said 2 years ago in that article, it's hard to get through a message, without the money side coming into it. And, sure, money's always been a part, like I said in that article, but it's never been the part. And now it just seems like it is almost the whole thing, record prices and all that. So yeah, so that's how I feel. 2020 has done nothing, but maybe it's gotten more prevalent.
Yeah. How do you what do you do personally before we talk a little bit more about that and break that down? Like, what do you do personally to connect with that sort of collector joy or get away from the money finance talk? What do you do?
Well, for me, I have my collections,
Yeah.
and my collections rarely get touched, right? So there's no amount of money. I mean, I was up for one of my pristine 10 Charizards. Recently I was offered $250,000 for one. And I mean, legitimate, in fact, twice, legitimate offers where I could sell one of those two pristine Charizards for up to $350,000. And I mean, it there's no way. I mean, the way I feel at that point, had they offered $1 million, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
Those I will not give up. It's as simple as that. They're, it's almost like they're my identity. It's almost like I was talking to Rusty from TCA Gaming the other day, and he was saying, I was telling him how, a lot of these, like my Charizard collection is like my identity. And he was saying, well, you shouldn't feel like it's your identity. He said, you're a lot more than that. And you've done, so much more than that. And you'll always be, a big part in this, regardless of what your collection looks like. And it was nice of him to say that. But as far as my feelings are concerned, my collection is untouchable. And unless I can get a lot more back than the money.
Yeah.
And this happened recently, where I actually sold something that I would never sell.
I heard about this.
Did you really? Because I really don't know how anybody knows about it.
So I had heard about it and some rumblings about it, but I think there's a video out there that this person made that actually is out there, so everyone knows about it. If it's this big YouTuber.
You mean a video
that this YouTuber made
that had me in it?
No, not yet. That one has not come out, but he talked about it. He talked about
okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that one I did see. That one I did see. And in a case, you see, I kind of hate to talk too much about it, because
yeah.
it's gonna be coming out next Wednesday.
Yeah.
And
I look
next
forward
Wednesday,
to watching it. I'm excited to watch it.
The last thing I want to do is do anything to take away from the surprise of the release.
Absolutely.
And so let me just say that was a situation where, in my heart, and you'll probably see this on film, in my heart, I felt it was the right thing to do. Something made me feel that it was more important for me to make a move I wouldn't normally make, for the good of the game, for the good of the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the money. It wasn't anything like that. I mean, I'm not a rich person, but I'm comfortable where I don't have to worry about that anymore. So it wasn't that, but it was just, that's why some of I hope it comes across when the video drops, how, for me, I think it will come across, because I kind of wear my emotions on my sleeve.
Yeah.
I just felt that, and nothing to do with the money, I just felt that it was the best thing to do for Pokemon. And ever since the early 2000s, that's what it's been all about for me. Just to try to promote the hobby, keep the hobby going through the rough times, knowing what good and what joy it brought millions and millions of young people at the time, and knowing it was an unprecedented feelings and unprecedented emotions came from it, and bondings with the kids' parents, and bonding with their siblings and their friends. And if anything would have happened to Pokemon, I would have felt like a failure. Back in 2003, 2004, we went through difficult times, and Eddie Brenneschultz and I, E. Birdman, and I, we spent weeks talking. What can we do to get the hobby going again? We cannot let this die. And so that's been my mindset. Now, at the same time, prices went up. My collection went up. I don't have only my collection, but I have a whole bunch of extras. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I do sell, and I'm willing to sell. I'm not a super active seller. Like, if you look on my eBay, I think I sell maybe 1 or 2 things a month. I don't even list things, but a lot of people know me and contact me. And over these 20 years, I have a lot of previous customers who contact me all the time, because they want to get rid of their stuff or they want to get some new stuff. And so I have quite a few things that I will sell, but I wouldn't be considered really much of a seller. And most of it I do emotionally. I do out of emotions. I'm not going to sell a PSA 9 unlimited Charizard for 1,500 because I need that 1,500. But what is the story behind it? What's this person trying to accomplish? That just all means so much to me. And of course, we've I've had some Instagram posts that show my relationship with Logan Paul, and the relationship he has with my wife and with my son, one of my sons, in that. Well, that's one of the big things, is that something that's good for the hobby is somebody like him. And not only him, but a number of others I could tell you and you would recognize their names that I've had dealings with. I think it's very, very important to take those opportunities to push the hobby, to help the hobby, to show that I endorse them. I endorse Logan Paul 100%. I mean, we're going to talk about the charity later, but he's playing a big part in my charity. And I mean, things like that are just so important. Okay, I do interviews, with you. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I know you're versatile. You care about, all angles, all sides of the hobby, but I know that you care about the friggin' hobby. And whether you're talking to one, what does it say in the Bible? Something like, where one or two people are gathered in my name, right? Well, that's what I'm saying. Whether I'm talking to one person at the grocery store who recognized me, or I'm talking, to you and your community, it's important. It's so important. And if I can just, maybe turn or flip one or two people, over to the good positive side of this hobby, or even help Logan a little bit at times when he's needed help. If I can just do those little things, all in the name of my love for this hobby, then I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it, I hope, until I die. So, I know it sounds a little dramatic, but again, that is how I feel. So, and that's how I felt for 17 years, since the initial Pokemon stuff. And
well, this has been a big part of your life and your identity and your journey, being involved
yes,
in this community and all the friendships and the people you've met, and, like you love all of that so much, just like you love the cards. I mean, the cards themselves, you love to look at them and you feel a connection to them, but part of it is you've lived many years doing this and connecting with people. So it's a lot.
That's a great point.
It's a lot more than just the card, just that.
That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. Half my stories, if you and I were just kicked back, just sitting and talking, half my stories would be about relationships with other people in the hobby.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's wonderful that we all sort of, or so many of us had that, like, there's something about the Pokemon brand and the Pokemon cards and the design and the art that just so many people responded to so naturally. And then through that, as a connection point, so many of us get to meet and talk and share our love together. And then you develop those friendships and relationships, based off that mutual appreciation and understanding for the Pokemon hobby.
Right. And even the people you don't know, people that are watching you for the first time tonight, and things like that, those things come back. I'll do appearances here and there, and people will line up and talk, and they'll just mention a little story about me, maybe some way I answered an email 10 years ago or 15 years ago, or, just, a little something I said or did that would seem of little consequence, but something that was important to them. And then to hear those stories back, the connecting point was the interest in Pokemon, but the stories is how it touched our lives. And again, you're touching lives tonight. You've been touching lives for a long time, and you're going to keep that up. And people 10, 15 years from now are going to come up to you, and they're going to say, you know, I remember you said this thing, and it just really had an impact on my life. And I'll tell you something. Those are the non-Pokemon card stories that have everything to do with the relationships. And I don't know if I said it to you before, but relationships are also good business sense, because all those people, you know, I get people from 20 years ago emailing me. I've kept my same AOL address all these years just for this reason, right? Everybody says, what? Nobody uses AOL anymore. And I said, well, I do, because all those people from back then had that email, and they'll contact me, and that 20 years later, and they'll say, Gary, I got almost all this stuff from you, and it's really time for me to let them go. I need money for this or that. And so that's the business side. Yeah. And then the personal side is, you know, maybe how did it affect their life, or how did it affect my life in a positive way?
I think the challenge to me it comes from this place to touch on a couple of things that you said. Stems from this place of, like, you know, you want to help grow the hobby so much, right? You sold this card to this big YouTuber in part because, you know, you trust him, you feel like he loves it genuinely. Like he's extremely happy to have this, and he's a big fan of Pokemon, just like us, right? And you feel that. And then you also know he can use his platform to share that love, to share that excitement. And, you know, other people are going to discover Pokemon through that for sure. 100%. Right. So the issue with that seems that when more and more people enjoy Pokemon and love Pokemon, right, the more they're limited cards. You know,
but you know, let's take your example. Take your example with Logan, because he can have an effect on that, because he can afford to, you know, afford more than most of us. Yeah. But listen, when he was 7, 8 years old, his whole life was Pokemon. Mm-hmm. If you interviewed him, he knows all the evolutions. He knows all the generations. He just knows. He has Squirtle tattoos. You know, I mean, it's legit. You know, with him, it's legit. And so anything he were to do is fine. But now you take guys like, you know, maybe Gary V, you know, where he doesn't know a Pokemon from a Pokemon, right?
I cannot stand him, Gary. Like, yes. He drives me crazy, man. Like, his flipper mentality. To me, your post is like, that's exactly the problem. It's people who are coming in who just see it as an opportunity to make money, and are primarily doing it to speculate. And I agree. But so the point, the problem is, I think it comes with that. And so the more popular Pokemon gets, and this is true for just, we can, you know, any sort of pop culture, you know, market that was sort of unestablished. I think Pokemon very speculative for a long time, and is like attempting to move into some more like established, respected, you know, collectible. Although pop culture collectibles tend not to get respect from a lot of the people who are more on the, you know, antiques, firearms, that side of the trade and these sorts of things. But in the pop culture world, you know, Pokemon is, I think, really making a push to become, you know, really, really well established. Of course, the franchise, as we've talked about on this channel in our first video, it brings in more money, it makes more money, and has made more money than any other franchise, which always surprises people, that fact.
Yes.
You know, so there is all of this interest. There has been for a long time. But now there's a lot more interest coming into these cards. And so I think what's difficult about your post, or what's challenging, is sort of like, and I don't necessarily have an answer for this.
Right.
But, you know, you talked about here sort of later in the post, which I didn't read, like that, what is a true collector, and how to differentiate sort of what a true collector is from someone who's just investing, or 70% investing. And then you get into these issues, you get into these difficult situations where, frankly, like, I can think of a few different models or of people out there. You have these people who really loved these cards, but their love for it is dwindling, in part because they're worth a lot and they could do a lot in their life with that money. So there's that part. It's sort of like, yeah, I love these cards, but like, my love is almost not as strong because like they have so much monetary value and I could do so much in my life with that. And so I think you get that sort of issue. For people, particularly, so many people who collected Pokemon are young people who are not financially wealthy, not established. I feel very comfortable saying the vast, vast majority of collectors are not wealthy in Pokemon.
Yes.
Not extremely wealthy people. And I know that there are some very wealthy people in Pokemon, but that the vast majority of the market isn't that, just because it's such a young fan base. And so, logically that seems, and so much of Pokemon, like most pop culture collectibles, is so affordable and the masses are so interested in it. So it's not a market that you need a lot of like intense education on, and a lot of like specific experience and a ton of money to get into. The barrier to entry is very low compared to those sorts of things. And so with that, like, I feel like these people, in your position, as you stated, you're financially stable. And so for you, you can separate, it might be easier to separate the pressure to sell from, because it's like, I don't have that financial pressure. But what do you think for those people who are going through the ringer right now of like, this is potentially life-changing money, and there's no easy answer, but this is potentially life-changing money, but I love these cards and I may never get them back. What a tough position to be in.
It is an extremely difficult position for those people that are true lovers of the hobby and true collectors. Because life goes on, or unexpected things can happen in life. I always said all these years, not just Pokemon, but years before Pokemon, that if I had to sell my love and that I have for my collections and that, I would do it if I had to do it, because as wonderful as it is, there are some things more important. And like I had this one fellow recently, his baby, he had pretty good insurance until the child ended up in the NICU for a couple months. And he couldn't work because of the emotional, problem with him and his wife, how difficult that situation was. And he needed to sell his collection because he had to sell his collection.
Right.
And what I do in these cases, and there's probably people that are watching you that I've done this for, I tell them, and what I did with him, see, I don't want to toot my own horn, but maybe somebody else can take this lead, okay? What I did was he sent me his collection. I sent him the money he wanted, and I told him, I said, listen, within the next 2 years, if you want to buy this back for what you paid for it, I'll give you the cards back. You just give me the same amount of money back in that. And yeah, half the time they don't, right? Half the time they don't, but it's okay. I give them what they're worth. But half the time they do, and I can't tell you how happy they are about that, because now what you explained just now about what they were giving up being so important, that's all coming back to them. And so now not only did they get through their struggling time, but they ended up with their collection back in their hands. Yeah. So, so there you go. That's one little answer for somebody who can afford to do it. Not many people can, of course, afford to do that, to hold on to stuff. But
I know for me, Gary, and I was talking to Rafi recently about this. I'm going through a personal struggle. I think that, I feel that Pokemon is being pushed up a lot, and this could be very wrong. I think that Pokemon is being pushed up a lot right now by flippers and speculators, and then
Uh-huh.
not being primarily driven up, and actual market manipulators who I think they know what they're doing. And I think that it's very, to me, there are a lot of buyouts happening and very tactical things happening. And, you know, there's an interesting dip in sales this month, which is interesting. And I'm going to go into that in my channel that I've noticed,
Uh-huh.
not on prices, but on sales. But actually,
Oh,
prices and sales are actually very key to now, that's the start of when people start to get, people who need to sell start to undercut each other when their items stop selling. Very huge. But my concern, and that's pure speculation, right? But I think that
right.
there's a risk of that in this market. And for me, it's like, I am financially stable and have, plenty of, assets and investments that are more traditional,
Right.
let's say, right? But for me, my collection has become so valuable that it is like, this would be life-changing money for my kids of kids. And it's sort of there's like, for someone who loves it so much, I feel so much pressure to sell based on almost a moral duty to my kids or kids of kids. And
Right.
don't know if you feel that at all. I don't know if other people out there feel that. I think a lot of people are a lot more bullish on the market for me. So I think, push that away by saying these prices are going to keep going up, or the risk is pretty negligible. I'm not built that way, particularly for pop culture collectibles, because I've seen what's happened in other markets.
Right.
And so for me, I feel that dilemma. And I think that going back to sort of your point, or what you were talking about, is it's so frustrating that it's become about the money so much. And, ironically, right, guys, I run a finance channel, right? And I want to ask Gary's opinion on that, and how to run a finance channel on Pokemon that doesn't break, that doesn't hurt the hobby, right? Because my goal is really to teach people and help people, not make everyone just think about money and forget the love for their cards, right? And we can go into that.
Right.
But yeah, so it's what do you do in that sort of situation, and how do you, of course the answer, it's a personal choice and a personal answer. But I wonder, so I guess first, do you feel that way at all, on any level? Have you talked to people who feel that way? What's going on in sort of the, and I have high-end collector friends too, and we talk about these sort of subjects, but what are you willing to share? What have you been talking about?
Yeah, well, for sure. My once again, my collection is out of bounds. That's I'm not going to sell under any circumstances. But with all my other stuff, it's basically, the way, I mean, you've seen my wall of stuff, I think, my wall of stuff that is, nearing 100 boxes of all mint vintage Pokemon, right? I don't have any played cards. I don't have any used cards. I don't have any PSA 7s or PSA 8s. It's all mint vintage stuff. Yeah. But it's stuff that I got or saved all these years, to buy and sell, so I could keep my hobby going in that. And 20 years ago, that's what I did. But I am such an incorrigible collector that I have trouble selling stuff, and that's, I know you mentioned earlier about, what is really a true collector. And of course, I've thought about that. And part of being a true collector is hurting so badly when you lose something, whether you lose it, whether you sell it, you think about, well, I had that last year and I sold it. And so a true collector has an emotional attachment, which I do to every single one of those cards. I probably have 20,000 cards out there, that you and I could sit and pull out, and I might be able to tell you the story on nearly all of them. A story about how many years ago, where did I get them from, what. So as a true collector, that's it. There's an emotional, like my wife lets me, recently I bought the $60,000 worth of stuff from somebody. And I told my wife, I said, I'll get it. I'll keep what I want. I'll sell the rest. And she said, oh yeah, okay, that's good. That's okay. I've sold nothing. I haven't sold one single card out of it because I just hate to. I just can't stand it. That if I do so with those cards, even though my intentions are good on selling them, it's just too hard. It's just too hard for me to do it, and I don't have to do it. Put me into the other situation. Now, I think I talked to you before about the investment side, where I thought maybe a little leveling off was going to happen, or maybe a little drop off, might happen, 20%. I've changed my opinion on that, recently, because with the 25th anniversary coming next year, this could just keep blowing up, right? It could just keep going up higher and higher. And then people are going to be in even a worse situation, what you're discussing. We're now something that was $50 and today it's $300. Well, tomorrow it's going to be $1,000. Eventually, what are you going to do? Eventually you have your family, you have your children's future. If it went down, you have a lot tied up in it. It would be devastating, to have it go down to nothing, or have it go the way of the Beanie Babies, or, so not that I expect it to really ever, but
what I'm afraid of, Gary, and I've seen this happen in other markets, is what happens is the collectors are the ones that get burned because the investors actually can part with their cards. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem. So investors actually are strategically manipulating the market up, and they're shill bidding, and they're doing buyouts, and they're watching certain cards, and they're trying to put energy and attention. And they go onto my video, and if I say I like a card, they upvote it, and if I say I don't like a card, they downvote it. Like to that level of they're all about the perception of value. But it really
bothers me.
But at the end of the day, that person is actually going to be the one who has if they're smart, particularly these big money people coming from other hobbies who have a lot of experience doing this in sports cards, for example, and other places. They have a plan. Right. They're like, well, I'm going to wait for Logan Paul to push it. I'm going to wait for this point, and then I'm going to sell and start to sell into it. And I think that what happens is the collectors are going to hold on because they love the card so much, unless they absolutely need the money. But they're sort of going to be left in a lot of ways with the bag, and the investors are going to get out of it, and things are going to come back down to earth, in my theory, right? Because the market isn't being driven up all by these true collectors right now. And it certainly wasn't when I got in the hobby, but I felt like it was a lot more than it was now. Although interestingly, by your post in 2018, you already felt that investor, that feeling, right?
It was already starting. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, all of this is complete guessing and speculation. I mean, there are bubbles. I don't think Pokemon's necessarily in a bubble. I don't think that's a correct way of talking about it. I think of it more as like bubbles have different phases, like an awareness phase, which is like this Logan Paul, where it's more and more people. My mom came to me, who doesn't know anything about Pokemon, telling me a little bit about Pokemon. It's like it sort of trickles out, right, into people who are like, whoa, these things are real. Maybe I should put money into it. And
that's what the Pawn Stars episode did.
Yeah,
it did just that. People that knew nothing about Pokemon, they saw, but they loved watching Pawn Stars in general. They saw that, and they said, "Whoa, what's the Pokemon? Where the money's here?" And I thought that contributed to how I felt in 2018 when I wrote that article.
Yeah,
was that it got a lot of people involved, many in a good way,
right?
But some maybe not. And
that's the crux of it. It's like, what are you supposed to do, Gary? Like, whenever you what you're doing is amazing for the hobby, in my view, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a necessary sort of downside to it, and that's the way I view it. It's like, if we want this hobby to be bigger and more people to love it and connect it, there are going to be more and more people who see it as a way just to make money, or a primary way to make money. And I think what happens is it's like some of that I find very ethical and part of a normal, healthy hobby. and I talk about those businesses and those people who I think like sell, who like charge decent margins, who don't like say cards are going to go forever, you know, these sorts of things. And then I see other people, and the reason I really started the channel was there's this one particular stream, I refuse to mention his name, but there's this one dude, and he's just like, he's so manipulative to me, of his audience. Oh, we froze.
Yeah, you froze up for a second.
He feels so manipulative, and to me it's that feeling of like, I want to protect collectors financially. I want to teach them like financial skills so they don't get burned. And I could be, you know, I'm going to try to do the best job with that. Obviously, like any of that crystal ball stuff, you know, we don't know, bubble periods, as I was saying before, can last for like 5 to 10 years. Like this could go up and up. But the more that mindset, the more people are not feeling like you are, Gary, in my opinion, who are like, it would pain me to sell these cards. I would only sell these cards in an emergency. You know, the more, if the hobby's built of that, then
you're talking about your collection.
Yeah. If the hobby is built of people like that, you know, I think from the financial perspective, it's a much more solid base that it's not going to fall beneath. You know, and I don't know. And I think that for me too, Gary, you know, on some of the stuff you talked about, like for me with my cards, like I don't want to sell my cards, even if I think that they're going to go down. I think it's impossible to time the market, right? So in terms of like, do I sell now? Do I sell in a year? No, you know, it's really impossible to time the market well, but I don't even want to lose my specific cards. Like,
now, are you talking about your collection?
Yeah, like people say things like, you know, and Rafi will argue with me like, well, you can just rebuy the PSA 10 or the PSA 9, right? And I'm like, no, I actually collect the card, not just the grid. Mm-hmm. Like I've looked at these cards so much, my favorite cards in my collection, I know every little detail of that specific card. I don't want to lose the card. And I'll almost certainly never be able to buy that card again, because that card will likely be in a collector's hands unless that cert happens to come back up. And so that's the level that I feel a connection to some of these things. And so it creates...
But can I ask you a question?
Please.
Are you talking about all of your cards as the same one entity? Or do you have your personal collection and then other cards that you buy and sell or trade? And which are you talking about?
So I have sold everything that I didn't want permanently.
Okay.
So
you're talking about the cards you love. You're talking about your collection.
Yeah. And the truth is I have like 50 doubles of certain cards. I'm kind of like you, Gary. Like like the more the better. And I'm such a hardcore collector. And I'm also I don't think competitive is the right word, because it doesn't feel like competition to me. But I'm very, you know, when Scott talks about like he's a very competitive person, like I have a drive to set really high goals and meet them. And you know, I had the goal of having the biggest Pokemon collection in the world, right? You know, and that isn't something I necessarily need to achieve, but it's sort of like I love these things so much that feels very stressful. That's going to be a fun journey. It's not a competitive journey, you know, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, and I think why I bring it up is because even for me, who like has those feelings and those types of things, I'm feeling pressure to sell despite those, and so, but despite those strong connections to the cards. And so I think what I take offense to, and you haven't said this, but I've heard other people say it. It's like true collectors would never sell now. Or, you know, these like, it's like, don't tell me who's a true collector or not. You know, these types of things.
That is so out of line.
I know, and you have no idea what financial situation a person is in, or how painful it is, you know, for them to sell for them to sell their cards.
Yes.
You know, so I don't know.
Well, you know, I'm in a little bit different situation because I have my collection, which is where you are right now, and those I wouldn't sell unless it was life or death, basically.
Yeah.
But I have a whole lot of stuff, you know, that's That's not my collection. They're just things that I've played with, over the years. To give you an example, just sitting next to me, I don't keep Pokemon in this room, but just to give you an idea, this box here, these are all Spanish base set, first edition.
Oh, interesting.
Spanish.
That's pretty interesting.
Whoop. It's all, let me see. It's all, Spanish base sets.
Yeah.
Now, I don't collect those.
Yeah.
Here, hold on a second. Let me get you back up here. Okay. I don't want to sell, and this is about 10,000 Spanish base unlimited, first edition Spanish base set cards. And, I don't collect them, but I just want to keep them anyway, But if somebody really wanted Spanish cards, I would sell them and I wouldn't have a problem with it at all.
Yeah.
Except I've had these since the year 2000. So obviously I haven't tried very hard, to, sell them, even though they're peripheral parts of my collection. They're nothing that I have an emotional attachment to.
Yeah.
And then, over here, just below these, there's Chinese and Korean and Portuguese, Italian, Dutch, French, just tons of base set foreign cards.
Yeah.
I still have them all but the French. Somebody did get those a number of years ago. But these I would sell, even though everything is hard to sell, but these I would sell. My wall of cards I would sell every single one, and not feel too bad over it, because my collection is where my emotional attachment is. Yeah. Everything else is a little bit of a connection, but not like my collection. But I don't want to sound, I don't want it to sound wrong. If something happened with my daughter and I had to do something, every single thing in my world would go towards that. So I don't begrudge anybody for selling what they want. If they just think that they're maximizing their value and maximizing the dollars they can get out of it, then I'm not sure how much of a collector they were in the first place. But because maximizing dollars, you could have said that in 2000. You could have said that in 2005. You could have said that in 2010. It's time to cash out. 2016, when Pokemon Go came out, then now, when do you know when's the time to cash out? Everything could be worth 20% more next year with the 25th anniversary, especially with what Japan has in store, for it, with their Olympics and with everything else. Who knows when's the right time? So I guess for your true collectibles, the right time is when you don't have any other choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I think there's such a good tip in there that I heard, which is this tip of have a plan and know what brings you joy in the hobby and collect that and have that collector mindset very specifically for that. And if you need to have more of the investor business mindset to help you get there because you only have limited funds and you can use that in sort of service of experiencing that joy from having those cards and then holding those for forever, in your permanent collection, that's a great tip for trying to maybe keep the positive from becoming toxic, keep the hobby from becoming toxic for you with the financial stuff and the prices going up.
Good point. Yes.
I'm very sympathetic. I'm very empathetic for people who, I consider myself extremely lucky for when I came into the market. I think that I worked my butt off. Frankly, I was on eBay 3 to 4 hours a day, every day, after, despite my girlfriend hating that and trying to push me off all the time. And I'd go on after she went to sleep many nights, really trying to get a pulse for the market and trying to figure out what is my strategy here. I have this amount of money and I'm going to flip it and move it around until I can get this type of collection. Right.
Right.
But, and I think that is driven by passion and by collectors loving it, and so I think that but it's extremely lucky, like that timing. And so I really empathize for people who are coming in now with the same level of enthusiasm and ability and interest, and the money just doesn't go as far.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah.
You really got to be set to begin a collection today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's very true. I know that's part of your point, with this whole thing, is that it is very hard on those collectors. And I guess it's just a different strategy, huh?
Yeah.
You got to use.
I know Scott talks about there are always affordable things in the hobby, which is true, so it's true. Like, where can I go for the more affordable things?
Right.
I think even those are becoming so invested in these modern products with all the scalpers and it's like out of control right now.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Because you mentioned the modern product.
Yeah.
I call him my third son, Darian D. Bruce. He was telling me the other day. He's a local with me here. He was telling me the other day that he went to the Walmarts to try to get that new release, the new release this week, last couple of weeks. And it was the way he described it, how people were lining up 2-3 hours earlier in the morning, lining up 2-3 hours, waiting for them to be put out, and then charging, like Black Friday, charging the Pokemon section to get a few cases of that stuff. And I mean, that's exactly how it was in 1999. I mean, you didn't have, if you weren't a hustler, you didn't have much of a chance to get anything because it there were more buyers than product, right? Yeah. And so what he was telling me last week, it was so familiar. It's like nothing's changed. Yeah. So the attraction and the attraction is still there.
Yeah.
Now the difficulty getting stuff, prices and values going up, it's going to make it a lot harder. Yeah. But okay, instead of getting the whole 16 card holo set, okay, well maybe you got to concentrate on getting the Gyarados, or you can adjust. You can make adjustments. It's too bad you have to, but certainly the way the market is today and the way it has been, it's going to require adjustments to satisfy that collector's, bug. Yeah. And
that's why I think as people who have big collections, like, it's so important to understand how fortunate we are, and to try and help and support people who don't have that and understand where they're coming from. And that's my feeling about it. And so let me see here. We touched on most of what I wanted to talk about today. Yeah.
Maybe I could jump, just a little bit into the content creators. I'd like to talk about, just for a moment.
Yeah, let's. I think my audience is used to these like super long conversations, and I love them. So,
right.
Let's just have it.
Well, I'm running myself and my wife, Tuan Tong Hayes, are running a charity, and I did a poll. I did a poll 6 months ago or something on who people would like to see involved in my charity. What content creators? And so I took a lot of their suggestions, and there's 16, including my wife and I, content creators involved in what we're calling 16+1, which is a charity for autism. and the importance to that is, I think, like, many of your people know, and you certainly know, my daughter's autistic, and she, requires therapies and, things like that she hasn't been able to get because of the COVID virus stuff. And so, because places have to shut down or limited service and all that. Well, listen, these not just my daughter, but I mean, millions of other people who are autistic, 1 out of every 60 people, right? Those children are not getting the help they need. Fundraisers like for who I'm working with, the Center for Autism at Touro University, they can't have their fundraisers. They can't, run their, the things they do, the galas, the things in the parking lot, with games. They can't support, the autism center. And so we are, and 16 content creators, including 16 plus one. The other one is Logan Paul, who is amazingly charitable and extremely interested in my cause. So we're calling it 16 plus one. But what I wanted to say about the content creators is that every single one that I contact, and it's all the biggest names, it's all the big guys you can think of, right? They were all so enthusiastic to get on board, to be a big part of it. And I mean, it just left my heart so warm, knowing what an unbelievable community we're involved in. The people are, I mean, it almost brings tears to my eyes when I think what these people are doing, for autism and doing for this. About the work I did, probably with Leon Hart last year, what he's doing now with his NAMI charity, great charity, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and the money that's being raised. I mean, these people, care about things outside of Pokemon, but they can use their voices, and they're using these voices through me to run this unbelievable charity that's coming up in December, where people are going to be able to get a hold of something just as valuable and just as rare as the 39 Pokemon illustrators there are in existence. And I mean, I can't give a lot of details yet, but I just wanted to point out that by supporting your content creators, by watching their videos and things like that, you, along with many other of them, deserve all the attention you give them. These are really super good people, and they love to say their communities are great and that, but listen, these are great people doing this content, and they love Pokemon, and they're doing a lot of stuff to help me, as far as, helping these autistic kids. So, that reveal is going to be coming up within a month or two. And so you'll see what it is. But I just wanted to give a shout out, for those people like yourself who work hard to get information out there and make things entertaining. These are important, valuable, and extremely charitable, good people. Every single one of them. Even, well, I don't want to say that one, but I mean all of them. Let me just say all of them.
Yeah, this one not as much. But I can tell you he's not involved in this charity. So,
no, okay. I do.
I'm sure of that. So,
right.
So thank you so much for coming on, Gary.
Sure.
Why don't we end this here for today? Hopefully we can do more of these chats in the future. I love talking Pokemon with you. Really enjoyable.
Absolutely. I thank you for having me back again, and I will look forward to that next time.
Absolutely. And, and sounds like a wonderful cause. I'm in full support of it, and happy to help, in any way that I can,
Wonderful.
including donating money and trying to get involved in anything like that. So
I appreciate it.
So thanks again for coming on, and
Sure.
we'll talk again in the future.
Sure will. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.